pretty spectacular drop on the Chinese stock markets today, the first trading day back after the May Day holiday. Now that we're around the 2,800 point mark, is the rally over?
This is a very interesting question in the sense that actually the rally continued in a very good shape early this year, particularly in Q1. But if we look at April, it was already quite struggling for some of the stocks and the market overall as well. And the drop that we witnessed today is quite surprising in its scale, but to me this is probably a very healthy pullback or correction in the medium term. I don't personally think the rally that we have seen starting from early this year has come to an end yet.
Now, up until today, one of the main things that had been driving the recent volatility in the market had been liquidity concerns and whether or not we were going to see a targeted RRR cut in the next little while. How likely is one of those?
I think overall, if we take a step back, compare China with some of the other leading developed markets, our monetary policy has tended towards more the tightening end in the past 2 years. And our RRR rate have been standing at very elevated level, even historically if you compare it with China itself. Therefore, there is room for further cuts, not necessarily just the RRR, but even some of the other monetary policy instruments. We believe all those can come into play. With that said, the equity market is not entirely driven by the monetary policy, is not entirely driven by how loose that we see the monetary supply is. So yes and no, the equity market is very much working around how the monetary policy has been played out, but also ultimately we still believe it's ultimately driven by the fundamentals of the company.
Is that true in China, though? Is fundamentals really what investors look at?
In the past, I would say, given the high retail participation in China, many investors assume this market is more speculative than valuation-driven. However, I think it really has a lot to do with time horizon. If we look at medium-term to longer-term, in fact, even this market is fundamental-driven. A typical example is Multi, which is a very popular name in the market. It's popular because, okay, yes, the stock price itself is very high, but more importantly, it's the kind of return it has generated over a period of decades for investors. But ultimately, what is driving that name? What is driving that return? That is the fundamental of the company, because that company has been improving in its yield, in its return it can generate for equity owners during the same period. So in that regard, yes, the market is also driven by fundamentals.